This is CNN Breaking News.
Breaking news, you're fired. This is CNN Tonight. I'm Don Lemon. President Trump taking action about an hour ago in a statement, the White House saying that the acting Attorney General, Sally Yates, betrayed the Department of Justice by refusing to enforce a legal order designed to protect the citizens of the United States. Again, this is breaking. It's just happening just moments ago. I want to get to CNN, the White House correspondent Sarah Murray, and also our Justice correspondent Evan Perez. They both have been following this all day today. Sarah, the breaking news now, the administration just firing Sally Yates, acting Attorney General. Dramatic turn of events. What do you know?
Well, it is a dramatic turn of events, but not an altogether surprising one in light of Yates' determination that she was not going to instruct the Department of Justice lawyers to enforce Donald Trump's travel ban. This also comes on the heels of Sean Spicer saying earlier today that if government employees, and he was referring to a specific instance with State Department employees at that point, can't get on board, then they should essentially get out. So I don't think it's particularly surprising to see Donald Trump dismissing Yates, who was an Obama appointee. We are told by an administration official that he did not deliver that news over the phone, but rather she learned in a hand-delivered letter that she was going to be dismissed.
Evan Perez, I want to get to you now because the acting Attorney General, his name is Dana Bente. What do you know about him?
Well, he's a 29-year career attorney inside the Justice Department, so he's been there just a little longer than Sally Yates, who served just about 27 years, I believe. And so these are career lawyers who apparently have come to different places in the law, Don. He has decided that this is something he can defend. If you saw the statement that was issued by the White House, he says that he is prepared to enforce the law. I can tell you that this is something that Sally Yates struggled with all weekend long. And to give you a picture of the chaotic way in which the Trump White House rolled out this big announcement, this executive order, they didn't tell anybody, certainly at Sally Yates' level, what they were doing. She didn't get to see the order ahead of time. And so one of the things she struggled with is how to defend a law that she did not believe was lawful. If you see her statement that she issued earlier, I'll read a little piece of it in which she says, "I'm responsible for ensuring that the positions we take in court remain consistent with this institution's solemn obligation to always seek justice and stand for what is right. At present, I am not convinced that the defense of the executive order is consistent with these responsibilities, nor am I convinced that the executive order is lawful." That's a big deal for someone who was the acting Attorney General.
And Evan, if I can just jump in, because you read that statement, I think it's important for the viewer to get the full gist of what the administration put out there. And this is what he said. You said that she said she didn't believe that she could enforce the law, or that she wasn't sure about the law.
About the lawfulness of the order.
The lawfulness of the, right. And she says, the acting Attorney General, Sally Yates, this is from the White House and Sean Spicer, has betrayed the Department of Justice by refusing to enforce a legal order designed to protect the citizens of the United States. The order was approved as to form and legality by the Department of Justice Office of Legal Counsel. And then he says Ms. Yates is an Obama administration appointee who is weak on borders and very weak on illegal immigration. So essentially, some may see this as an attack of her.
Yeah, I mean, it is an attack. It is an attack on her personally, correct.
Yeah, go on.
No, it is. They, instead of sort of just firing her, what they've done there is sort of accused her of being weak on the law. And look, I got to tell you, inside the Justice Department, Sally Yates is being treated or being greeted as a hero for standing up for this. I know that this is something that was not very popular inside the department. The White House is right that they did get the advice of the Office of Legal Counsel, which looks at the narrow scope of the lawfulness of the president issuing this executive order. What Sally Yates has to do, and the lawyers who have to defend this executive order, they have to look beyond that. They have to look at the other statements that administration lawyers have made, including ones suggesting that this was going to be a religious test to determine who could benefit from coming into this country. So that's what she was reacting to if you look at what she said. And Don, what's important about the appointment of Dana Bente, the U.S. Attorney in Eastern District of Virginia? What the Trump White House needed was a Senate-confirmed U.S. Attorney who could act as Attorney General and who could still sign off on surveillance warrants, foreign surveillance warrants. And That's what they needed to do, and that's who they found in Dana Bente.
Okay, and then speaking of Dana Bente says, I'm honored to serve President Trump in this role until Senator Sessions is confirmed, and we'll talk about that, Evan, in a second. I will defend and enforce the laws of our country to ensure that our people and our nation are protected. And it says Dana Bente, Acting Attorney General, which is his new role now. Speaking of that confirmation, this may hold up the confirmation because I'm sure Democrats are going to have a lot of questions, and also it gives them fuel.
Right, exactly. And we already know that the Republicans had a very narrow majority, obviously, in the Senate. They had enough votes to pass, to confirm Jeff Sessions. And we expected, actually, Don, we expected that Jeff Sessions was going to be the Attorney General by the end of the week. With all of this, and with the fact that the Trump White House rolled out this executive order without really consulting members of Congress, I think you're going to see some uncomfortable Republicans, a few of them, who are not sure what to do here. The fact that Jeff Sessions really had the support of the majority probably means that he will be the Attorney General at the end of the week. This is just a lot of drama between, obviously, what we thought was going to be a smooth confirmation week for him and the next few days, obviously.
Yeah, we should not be surprised considering the last 10 days. Listen, Sarah, meanwhile, the White House defended the ban despite large protests all across the country this weekend. And despite today's developments, they are sticking to their guns right now.
That's right. It wasn't just large protests across the country. It was a lot of angry Democrats on the Hill, but a lot of angry Republicans on the Hill also, exactly because of the point Evan just made. A number of key Republicans in leadership and on key committees that had to deal with this were not informed of the executive order ahead of time, but you can imagine they certainly got a number of phone calls over the weekend, not only from reporters, but from folks who were stuck in the chaotic travel situation this entailed. Now, White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer defended the rollout of this today in his press briefing. Take a listen to what he said.
You don't know when the next threat's coming. You don't know when the next attack's coming. And so the best you can do is to get ahead of it, because if you wait, you're going to be reacting. And what I think I want to be clear on is the president's not going to wait. He's going to make sure he does everything in his power when he can to protect the homeland and its people. That's it. And so getting ahead of threats is the key. Not waiting till they happen. Not saying, hey, once it happens, how do we react to make sure it doesn't happen again? I think what I want to be clear about is that since becoming president, he's continued to take steps through executive order and otherwise to make sure that this country is as safe as it can be and that we're ahead of every threat. We're talking about a universe of 109 people. There were 325,000 people that came into this country over a 24-hour period from another country. 109 of them were stopped for additional screening. We've got to keep this in proportion.
Now, you see Spicer there essentially explaining why they believe they could not have given administration officials or members of Congress on the Hill more of a heads up that this was coming, essentially saying you have to head these threats off early, and they didn't want a rush of people coming over the border. Now, just to offer a little bit of reality there, if you are a refugee, it takes you well over a year before you can go through the process of being admitted to the U.S. Visas can take weeks at a time, and so it's worth noting that that doesn't exactly jive with reality, and there are folks who were in these agencies who were charged with implementing this travel ban, who weren't sure exactly how it would work, who didn't have the appropriate guidance, which also contributed to this confusion over the weekend. So a lot of folks sort of saying that even if they could get behind what the policy was, the point of the policy, they really couldn't get behind the way the administration rolled it out over the weekend.
All right, Sarah, Evan, thank you very much. It's going to be a very busy time for you, so stick around. Don't go too far. I want to bring in now Defense Attorney Alan Dershowitz, Fareed Zakaria, the host of Fareed Zakaria GPS right here on CNN, CNN presidential historian Timothy Naphtali, CNN political commentator Carl Bernstein. He joins us by phone. I'm so glad that to have you all here. Alan, I'm going to start with you. Did Sally Yates need to go?
Well, Sally Yates made a very serious mistake. Instead of simply limiting herself to saying that she thought it was unconstitutional or illegal, she used the following words, that she had the right to decide whether the policy choice is wise or just and what is right. That's not her job. Her job as Attorney General is simply to determine whether the law is lawful. It's the job of the elected president to determine whether the policy choice is wise or just. Now, this is a terrible policy. I am completely opposed to it. But as Attorney General, if she disagreed with the policy, her option was to resign. she would say, I'm not going to enforce this policy. But to disallow the entire Justice Department from defending a policy, at least parts of which are probably constitutional, parts of which are probably lawful, instead of giving a nuanced analysis to forbid the Justice Department from defending it instead of resigning, was a serious mistake. And that mistake was only compounded by Trump's mistake in firing her. What Trump should have done is worked around this thing, kept her on, had a special counsel appointed by the court or even by himself, and had the administrative action defended in court. So I think we're seeing mistake after mistake after mistake here.
Carl, I want to bring you in because I know you know about this happened during the Nixon administration. Similarly, I think the person stepped down, but this time, what do you think? Do you think that she needed to go?
There's a big difference because the Saturday Night Massacre was really about firing the Attorney General when Nixon was the target of an investigation and was actively obstructing justice. I think the president is within his rights here to fire the Attorney General, that he has that ability, and it's not wise that he did. But what's really happened here is that the president and his presidency is in chaos. And it's apparent to all but his most serious defenders and those who are his greatest defenders and advocates. But for Republicans on Capitol Hill, who I'm talking to, who are doubting his abilities, doubting even his stability under pressure, this is an extraordinary series of events. We now have hundreds of thousands of people who have been going into the streets as a result of this. We have a former president, his predecessor, who is encouraging people to go into the streets because what Trump has done here is obstructed American principles. He hasn't obstructed justice. He's obstructed the most basic of American principles of what we stand for as a country in terms of immigration, a nation of immigrants. These are authoritarian pronouncements that he has been making for days now, and it's
Carl,
coming to haunt him.
Stand by, because Timothy Naftali, he wants to say a few words about this. Did he make this unnecessarily political by firing this person?
Well, first of all, Carl is absolutely right that the circumstances are not the same as the famous Saturday Night Massacre. But what is the same is the president's lack of nuance. There was a tin ear. Nixon had a tin ear about the political moment in the fall of 1973, and Trump has a tin ear. This is not the time to encourage fears of authoritarianism in the United States. The fact that he responds by firing the same night just feeds the concern that many Americans have that this administration does not care about the Constitution. There's a real role for an independent judiciary. We saw it this weekend. Whether or not the acting Attorney General was right to engage in a policy debate is beside the point. The issue is the president needs to restore confidence in his willingness to be disciplined and to respect the Constitution. By firing the acting Attorney General tonight, he didn't do that, and he didn't meet the test of leadership.
I know you look at this in a global level, but what are your thoughts on this?
Well, what's striking to me is the atmosphere of almost hysteria that the White House is creating, suggesting that it needs to do this because, otherwise we're going to be facing this barrage of terror attacks as if this is London in the Blitz in World War II. The United States has not had a huge spate of terror attacks. The last terror attack, Tim and I were talking about this, was by a French Canadian against a mosque, against Muslims who were worshiping. We are not in some kind of, what was the haste to do all this? I think everyone agrees the president has the right to have his own attorney general. The attorney general, by the way, has the right to say, I don't believe this order is lawful and I will not execute it and therefore resign. But the atmosphere, that we are in some kind of imminent danger, that if he had announced that this policy was being reviewed and it would take a month or two, that somehow we would find an influx of would-be terrorists coming. This is all, frankly unreal. There's nobody else really who believes this. And so one wonders whether this atmosphere of hysteria is being created precisely to provide the ability to act in an unimpeded unilateral way.
Fareed, what about our system of checks and balances? Has that broken down, or are we seeing that playing out now? Because it seems that maybe they want to, if you're looking at it just objectively, that they want to sort of break down our system of checks and balances.
You know, the American system does not have checks and balances really within the administrative branch. People often think that, but the president, his cabinet, his national security advisor, all those people, the National Security Council, they serve at the pleasure of the president. This is not a parliamentary system. These are not independent political actors. They serve at the pleasure of the president. The checks on the president are Congress, which is now a Republican Congress, the courts, and the media. And what is interesting to watch is when the Trump White House feels that it is being blocked by any of these institutions, they push back hard. I mean, as you know, they push back against the media very hard. There is almost a campaign to delegitimize the media.
They know that's one of the only checks and balances that they have, so they have to delegitimize.
I think that's right. I think that there's a conscious effort to say, let's present everything as, everything is fake news, so nobody can be trusted. You see it now with the courts and by extension, the legal branch, as it were. And with Congress, we'll see. But so far, Congress has, frankly, rolled over.
All right, everyone stay with me. When we come back, more on our breaking news coverage. We'll be right back.